What do you think is the worst kind of silence? The kind after someone screams? The kind that comes right before a storm? Or maybe the kind that surrounds you when you know something is out there, watching but you can't see it? I used to think silence was peace, a break from the noise. But after what happened to me in those woods, I know better now. My name is Marcus. I'm 33, a forest ranger. Been doing this for nearly a decade. Usually I love it. The long stretches of quiet, the wind through the trees, the solitude. It's peaceful, or it used to be. They transferred me out to Deep Pine Station last fall. It's a remote stretch of wilderness about 200 miles from the nearest major town. Just endless pine forests and old ranger trails that barely show up on modern maps. I didn't ask for the transfer. They just said, "We're short-staffed. You're experienced. We need eyes out there." I should have asked more questions. The previous ranger, Alan Greer, left in a hurry. Left behind all his gear, his truck, even his dog. No one gave me the full story. Just that he'd taken personal leave and hadn't been back since. No forwarding info. Nothing. I arrived the second week of October. The air was crisp, orange leaves still clinging to branches. The drive-in was beautiful but unsettling. No cars, no wildlife, not even birds. Just miles of trees and quiet that pressed against the windows like fog. Deep Pine Station is this small wooden outpost tucked between the base of a cliff and a dried-up riverbed. One entrance, no phone service, one old radio unit. My first thought, stepping out of the truck, something feels wrong here. The place looked abandoned. Even though I knew someone had been there weeks ago, the grass was overgrown, the porch covered in leaves. The door creaked when I opened it, like it hadn't moved in months. Inside, it smelled like dust and old wood. A single desk, cot, stove, and a thick binder of maintenance logs. Everything was quiet, but not a peaceful quiet. The kind where your ears strain for something, anything to break it. A bird, a squirrel, hell, even a raccoon. But there was nothing. Not even wind. That first night, I unpacked what little I brought: spare clothes, some canned food, flashlight, field journal. I found the logbook Alan had left behind in the drawer. The last entry was dated September 17th. Heard the whispering again, coming from the tree line. No tracks, nothing on cameras. Starting to doubt what's real. Leaving lights on tonight. I paused at that. Whispering? I flipped through earlier entries. Routine stuff at first. Weather logs, patrol reports, wildlife sightings. Then somewhere around late August, things changed. Notes about movement in the woods at night. Descriptions of shadows that didn't match animal profiles. Mentions of hearing things of voices, but no one ever showing up. The handwriting got more erratic with every entry. Slanted, unsteady. The last few pages weren't even full sentences, just scrawled words. They know my name. Not animals. Can't sleep. Don't look at the trees at night. It read like a man falling apart. I closed the journal, told myself it was just isolation messing with him. That happens, right? Outposts like these are lonely. I made a fire in the stove and settled in. The wind started howling outside, first sign of weather since I arrived. I tried to convince myself that was comforting. At around 1 a.m., I heard it. A knock. One solid, deliberate knock on the front door. I froze. My heart did that thing where it skips a beat and then slams back into your chest like it's trying to escape. I hadn't heard anyone approach. Not a car. Not footsteps. Nothing. Another knock. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door. Nothing. Just trees. Moonlight. fog curling around the grass like it was searching for something. I stepped out with a flashlight, scanned the area. Still no sound, no wind, no crickets, just wrongness. I turned slowly, the light catching the edge of the tree line, maybe 20 feet from the porch. That's when I saw it. Eyes, low to the ground, glowing faintly, watching me. At first I thought deer, maybe a coyote, but then they blinked, sideways, like a lizard, not a mammal. I stepped back inside, locked the door, and stayed up the rest of the night with my FL. By sunrise, I was half convinced I'd hallucinated the whole thing. Sleep deprivation, first night jitters. Isolation does weird things to the mind. I walked the perimeter after breakfast. No tracks, no broken branches, no signs that anything had approached the cabin. But I couldn't shake the feeling like I was being observed, like something had been standing just out of sight the whole time. I kept patrolling, noting more and more signs that made less and less sense. First was the squirrel, or what was left of it, torn apart, but not by a predator. It hadn't been eaten, just shredded, limbs scattered in a near-perfect circle, blood pooled in a spiral. Second was the tower. The fire watch tower was supposed to be decommissioned. I passed it a mile east of the station. It stood crooked, half sunken into the earth, stairs rotting. But someone had been up there recently, fresh footprints on the moss. No boots, bare feet, and a smell. A god-awful stench that clawed into my sinuses, like wet copper and mildew. I climbed partway up to check the hatch. It was nailed shut from the outside. That's when I heard it again, whispering, not in the wind, not in my head. Real. Words I didn't recognize, whispered in a language I couldn't place, whispered behind me. I turned quickly. No one there. The forest was silent again. But something was shifting in the shadows. I couldn't see it, not directly. But every time I turned, it was like the trees had moved. I descended fast and jogged back to the outpost. Inside, I tried calling the ranger station. No signal. The radio gave me static. When I switched to the emergency frequency, it crackled for a moment. Then a single voice bled through. A woman's voice, barely audible. "Please, don't let it in." Then static. I tried to rationalize it, maybe another ranger. A distress call from another station. I recorded it on my phone. But when I played it back, nothing. Just static, no voice. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the corner of the room with the flashlight on and the rifle across my lap. The trees outside pressed closer than I remembered. Or maybe I was losing it, like Alan had. And then, at 2:17 a.m., the front door creaked open. I hadn't touched it. No wind, no breeze, just creaking. I aimed my flashlight and slowly got to my feet. The door was open just a few inches, but enough to see out into the clearing. And what I saw, it wasn't an animal. It wasn't a person. It was tall, too tall, gaunt. Its limbs looked like tree branches, thin, crooked, but shifting as it stepped into the clearing. Its head turned slowly towards me. It had no eyes, just deep, caved-in sockets. But I knew it was looking at me. And then it raised one arm, bent backward like a broken marionette, and pointed at the watchtower. That's when I finally slammed the door shut, locked it, boarded it up. I didn't sleep, didn't blink, just sat with the flashlight until the battery ran out. By morning it was gone, but something inside me knew. This was just the beginning. The forest had noticed me. And whatever I'd seen, it wasn't done yet. The following morning, Elias was already up before the alarm. He hadn't slept much, if at all. Every time he shut his eyes, he'd see that figure in the trees, featureless, unmoving, and watching. The sun had barely crept over the mountains, painting the pines with cold gold. As he made coffee in the ranger cabin, a strange silence clung to everything outside. Even the birds were absent. He pulled out the old ranger logbook. Maybe Alan, the missing ranger before him, had left notes, something to explain what was happening. The first few entries were routine reports on hiking trail closures, occasional bear sightings, and reminders about fire protocols. Then, about 6 months before Alan vanished, the tone changed. May 17th. Heard the whispering again, near the north tree line. It always stops when I try to record it. June 3rd. Found another one of those damn symbols, triangle inside a circle, carved deep into an old oak. Trees aren't growing right near it. Feels colder. June 29th. There's something in the woods. It watches the tower. It doesn't come close. Yet. Elias ran his fingers over the yellowed paper. The entries became more erratic. Handwriting shakier. July 18th. Heard myself calling from the woods. But I was in the tower. What the hell is going on? July 27th. It knows my name now. There were no entries after that. The logbook ended as abruptly as Alan's time there. Elias leaned back in his chair. A cold knot formed in his stomach. He hadn't told anyone about the voice last night, about the thing in the pines, but this made it real, tangible. Not just stress, not just isolation. Something was here before him. That afternoon, Elias grabbed his radio and took one of the patrol ATVs to check the perimeter. If this thing was in the forest, he'd find where it had been, or at least confirm he was losing it. The trees got denser past marker 12. The deeper he went, the quieter everything became. It wasn't just the lack of animals, it felt like the air itself didn't want to carry sound. At one point, his footsteps were the only noise. Then he saw it. A large spruce near the base of an old ravine with markings carved deep into its bark. Symbols, dozens of them. Circles inside triangles, jagged X's, and one that looked like a distorted face. All etched into the wood like a ritual. Some fresh. Some looked like they'd been there for decades. Like something had been coming here. For years. Suddenly the wind changed. A sharp, earthy scent filled his nostrils. Rotting pine, and something else. Something metallic. Elias turned slowly. Nothing. But the forest had shifted. The trees around him weren't the same ones he passed earlier. It was subtle. A bend in the wrong direction. A gnarled root that hadn't been there. The light was dimmer, even though the sun hadn't moved. His radio crackled. Elias? A woman's voice. Static. Distant. Come back to the tower. But the voice, it wasn't from dispatch. It was his mother's voice. She'd been dead for 7 years. I tried to shake off the experience, but the forest had sunk into me, like a shadow I couldn't outrun. The more I thought about the voices, the clearer they became in my memory. Not just whispers, but pleading. And sometimes, warnings. I returned to my ranger post the next morning with a smile painted on my face and a thermos of coffee in hand, pretending everything was normal. My supervisor, Grant, gave me a nod. "Everything good, Micah?" he asked. I lied and nodded. The problem was, I wasn't the only one hearing things. Later that week, Ellie, one of the younger rangers, confided in me. "Do you ever get this weird feeling like the trees are watching you?" she asked with a nervous chuckle. I froze. "Why do you say that?" She shrugged. I've been working the north perimeter shift, and I swear every time I stop walking, it's like I can hear something walking behind me. And last night, I found boot prints. Big ones, but not any of ours. It wasn't paranoia. Something was happening in that forest, and more of us were starting to notice. One evening, I decided to check out the northern perimeter myself. I wanted to prove, to myself more than anyone, that it was just wildlife or some trick of acoustics. I headed out right before dusk, the sky melting into orange and violet behind the tree line. The trail was silent, too silent. Even the crickets had quieted. That's when I saw it. Ahead on the trail, maybe 50 feet out, there was a figure, human-shaped, still, facing away from me. I froze. "Hello?" I called out. It didn't move. I stepped closer. "Hey, you're not supposed to be here. This is protected land." Still no movement. Then, as I took another cautious step, it twitched, just slightly, like a broken marionette adjusting its limbs. That's when I realized it wasn't facing away. It was facing me. I just hadn't seen its face, because it didn't have one. I stumbled back, reaching for my radio. Static. Nothing but static. I looked up again, and just like that, it was gone. No sound, no movement, just the trail, empty again, like it had never been there. I sprinted all the way back to the station, heart pounding like a drum in my ears. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. That night, I barely slept. Every crack in the cabin walls, every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps outside, like something had followed me back. The next morning, I tried to act normal, but every sound made me flinch. Ellie noticed. "You okay?" she asked, handing me a cup of coffee. "Didn't sleep well," I muttered. We were sitting on the porch outside the ranger station, the mist still clinging to the tree line. She hesitated before speaking again. "You know that hiker that went missing 2 weeks ago? They found his pack. It was half buried, out near the pines." "Was it torn or anything?" I asked. "No, that's the weird part. It looked untouched. But there were no tracks, no sign he ever walked there." Later that day, I decided to go back to the area where I saw the faceless figure. It was reckless, I know, but something about that moment, about the forest itself, was calling me. I took my gear, packed light, and didn't tell anyone where I was going. By the time I reached the northern edge, the sun had started to dip behind the trees. I could feel the temperature drop like a warning. Everything around me seemed too quiet again, not peaceful, dead. I stood there in that clearing, waiting. I didn't know what for. Maybe I wanted to see it again. Maybe I wanted answers. Or maybe I just wanted proof I wasn't losing my mind. Then I heard it again. The crunch of leaves. I turned fast, flashlight ready, but saw nothing. And then I heard a voice. Not a whisper. A clear, female voice echoing through the trees. "Help me." I spun in every direction, trying to trace it. It was coming from deeper in. I followed, stepping off trail, pushing past thick brush and old roots. The trees seemed tighter here, like they were closing in around me. The voice came again. "Please." It sounded like it was ahead, maybe just over the ridge. I pushed forward, breath short, heart pounding. Then I reached the top of the hill and stopped dead. Below was a clearing I'd never seen before. In the center stood a structure, something like a stone archway, ancient and cracked with moss growing around its base. It didn't look man-made, but it also didn't look natural. And standing beneath it was a girl, barefoot, pale, wearing a white dress stained at the hem with dirt. Her head was tilted downward, hair covering her face. I called out, Hey, are you all right? She slowly looked up, and I swear to God, it was Ellie. But it couldn't be. Ellie was back at the station. I'd seen her less than an hour ago. Ellie? I asked. She didn't respond, just stared. Then, slowly, she raised one arm and pointed behind me. I turned. There was nothing there. When I looked back, she was gone. The clearing was empty, and the forest was silent again. I don't even remember the walk back. Not exactly. One moment I was staring into that impossible darkness beyond the arch, and the next I was standing on the porch of the ranger station, my hands shaking, boots caked in mud, a cold wind biting the back of my neck. The sun was just beginning to rise, that pale kind of dawn where everything looks washed out and unreal, like the world hasn't fully loaded yet. The pines behind me whispered softly in the breeze, but the silence in my chest screamed louder. Ellie was inside, alive, sitting at the desk like nothing had happened. She looked up and froze, her eyes locked with mine, and something passed between us that didn't need words. Something hollow, something knowing. "You're back," she whispered. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My mouth was dry. My mind felt shredded, like I'd left a part of it behind in those woods. She stood up slowly and walked toward me. "You shouldn't have gone near that trail." I blinked. "You knew?" "We all know," she said softly. "We just pretend we don't." I sat down at the table, hands still trembling. The radio crackled softly in the corner, but no one spoke through it. No calls, no check-ins, just static. I stared at Ellie. "I saw you. Out there. You were calling me." She looked away. "No, that wasn't me." A pause, a long, heavy silence. Then she added, almost too quiet to hear, "It wants to be familiar. That's how it gets in." A chill ran down my spine. "It?" I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she poured me a cup of coffee. The warmth of the mug didn't help the cold that had settled into my bones. The kind of cold that doesn't go away. The kind that starts on the inside. I didn't ask any more questions. I didn't want answers anymore. Sometimes knowing more doesn't help. Sometimes it just opens doors that should have stayed shut. That was my last shift. I resigned that week, packed what little I had. When I left, I didn't look back. Not at the cabin, not at the trail, and definitely not at the tree line. Ellie watched me go. She didn't wave, just stood there, arms crossed, eyes on the pines, like she was waiting for something to step out. I moved to the city, got an apartment where the only woods are concrete, traded the howl of wind through trees for honking horns and streetlights. But even here, the silence creeps in at night. Even here, I hear them sometimes. Whispers. At first, I thought I imagined it. Stress, maybe. But they come when it's quiet, when I'm alone, when I try to sleep. They say my name, just like she did. And sometimes I wake up standing by my apartment door, reaching for the handle. And I don't remember getting out of bed. I haven't told anyone this. I probably never will, because who would believe me? The forest doesn't just live in the pines. It follows. It remembers. And somewhere, in the quiet between breaths, I know it's still calling me back. I see it when I blink too long. I hear it when I dream. The arch, the darkness, the thing wearing Ellie's face. Still waiting, still whispering, still watching.